Edition of Open Air with Susan Ray and Mavis Nicholson.
Hello and welcome to an open-air Australian special. And no, he hasn't moved in with the neighbours, but he's moved out of the Boswells and he has now moved in with us. Peter Howard will be telling me just why he gave up bread. But first, we take you on a trip down under for a beginner's guide to Oz.
Australian TV has come a long way since the days of Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. Grundy Productions, those TV wizards from Oz, have spelled surefire success in more than 67 countries worldwide. It's best known in Britain for programs like these. A daily dose of slap, tickle and surgery was just what the doctor ordered at the Albert Memorial Hospital. But the young doctors had their fair share of shock, horror, melodrama. Wobbly sets and dodgy dialogue made the Wentworth Detention Centre for Wayward Women a worldwide success.
Here goes. I've got my fingers crossed here. Yeah, well, if this doesn't work, we're well and truly stuffed.
Prisoner Cell Block H, Grundy's best-selling soap, has been seen in more than 40 countries worldwide. In America, it masqueraded under the title Caged Women. Richmond Hill found its way onto our screens last year after the Aussies axed a slice of suburban life.
No!
While Sons and Daughters, a saga of feuding families, introduced Australia's first super bitch, Pat the Rat Hamilton. But it's those neighbours from Ramsay Street that have taken Britain by storm. Their sunshine lifestyle has taken them right to the top of the TV charts.
Right, well, what do you think about the TV wizards from Oz? Phone us now on 061 814 0424 if you think our screens are awash with too many soaps from down under. Brookside's executive producer Phil Redmond thinks they are, and he's here to tell us why we must pop the Aussie soap bubble. And straight in from Sydney to join us this morning is the man who led the Oz invasion. He's Grundy TV's Senior Vice President, Peter Pinney. And this man behind me here wants to know what you think of Australian television. Why? Because Open Air is joining forces with women to find out what you're switching on to. And he's the editor of Women magazine, David Darwin. Now, Peter Pinney, first of all, why do you think that the British nation is in the grip of your products, most noticeably Neighbours?
Susan, I think Neighbours' success in this country comes about because of one thing. It was the first Australian serial that was shown here the way it was made in Australia. It was meant to be a strip program that was seen 5 days a week. And up until that time, I mean, Sons and Daughters have been seen 3 days a week, but Neighbours is 5 times a week. So you were seeing it the way that it was conceived. And I also think that Neighbours came at a time when worldwide, early in the 80s, we noticed that there was a switch off from viewers for violent television programs. They didn't want to know anything about Dukes of Hazzard and things like that. So, and we noticed that they wanted to see more romance. And it was in this climate that Neighbours was conceived by Reg Watson, who, as you know, of course, also created Crossroads here. And it was always meant to be a program that espoused traditional family values, a very moral program, if we touched issues, we did it in a very soft way. And
you just don't offend anybody. It's nice and people like it.
Yes, and a good percentage of each program is humour. I would say probably 50% of every program is devoted to humour.
Well, let's ask Phil Redmond here. I mean, this is such a nice programme and everybody likes it, so why are you writing articles about getting rid of Australian soaps?
Well, I not particularly want to get rid of Neighbours or any particular Australian soap. I mean, my concern is at the moment there's something like 24 hours a week of Australian imported drama on British television. And my concern is that it's not particularly Australia, it could be 24 hours of anything. And what Peter's just outlined is what we've known on Grange Hill for years, that the kids would like to see Grange Hill every night of the week. We know that on Brookside, but we've never done it because of cost. And the problem is that we're endangering television and going down the road that the motorbike industry and the television set production industry went to in the 60s, and that is importing cheap Hondas and cheap Sony televisions. And you can't say to people, don't buy them, you know, because if it's cheap and it's cheerful, you know, they will, you know. And my concern is that in 5 years' time, when television really starts to explode in 1992 with more deregulation and more channels, it's going to be very difficult for producers like me to actually sort of be producing in Britain at a cost level that will sell into the industry. So it's a concern for the whole industry, not particularly any one particular programme.
Right, well let's speak now to David Durman, editor of Woman magazine. David, you're the guilty man really, aren't you? Because Woman and your sister magazine, Woman's Own, you look at it every week and there's Jason and Kylie and Daphne and Shane, you know, from Neighbours and all that kind of thing. Are you responsible for it, or are you just reflecting public taste?
Around for a long time, obviously.
Oh, sorry, David, could you start again? We lost your microphone there for a moment.
Right.
Could you just, once more with feeling from the top, thank you.
All right. I think we're reflecting public taste. The soap phenomena is nothing new. Look at the success of Coronation Street over the last 20 years. I think people do want to read about it. We don't do it every week. There's nothing about soaps I notice in this week's issue. But generally people do want to read about it, and obviously we're happy to satisfy that demand.
So you don't feel that you are actually promoting it, that it's happening anyway, you feel?
Yes, I think we're like the soap producers themselves, giving our readers on Woman what they want.
Right. Well, let's go to the phones now. Who's on the phone? Is Murray Llewellyn there?
I'm here.
Hello, Murray. What do you think about, calling from London, what do you think about the invasion?
Well, I think we've had a surfeit last year, which we excused because of the bicentennial. Though I think that was unfortunate because, frankly, I don't think the Australians have much to be proud of after their treatment of the Aborigines. But apart from that, importing cheap television, in every sense of the word cheap, because the standard is so low, it really is appalling when we have such fine actors and producers here, is I think, endangering our industry.
What's your interest in this, Murray? Are you just saying this from the standpoint of an ordinary viewer?
Well, not quite, because for many years, over 30 years, I've been a drama coach. And so I do know about our standard, and I do know a little bit about acting standards in general.
Right.
And honestly, the Australian ones couldn't be more amateurish.
Right, well, I think we know where you stand on that, Murray. I'd also, before I get my guests to answer, I'd also like to go to our Plymouth studio where Joyce Marker is. Joyce Marker, hello.
Hello.
Hello, what's your feeling about it all, Joyce?
Well, I feel several of their series give us first-class entertainment. If I wanted more realism, then I'd watch a documentary or the news. My favourite being Sons and Daughters and series like The Sullivans, but they've never had the good publicity that they deserve or the hype of Neighbours. But really, as I said, it's entertainment, and I don't find their acting is any worse than what we get on the other soaps.
Phil, is your argument with the quality of these products, with, I mean, we've referred rather maliciously to wobbly sets and flat dialogue and all that kind of thing, is that your argument?
No, that's not the root of the argument, because, I mean, if I put my hand on my heart, I mean, I could easily delve into British television and pull out a few programmes that have got by with, you know, terrible dialogue, terrible acting and wobbly sets. I mean, no, my point is that we mustn't be distracted onto this argument about quality all the time. I mean, the problem is at the moment that we're in a very regulated system of television, and we have a kind of self-imposed quota of only 15% should come from outside Britain. But the problem is that 15% is coming more and more and more into peak time. And, you know, you can't blame people for buying programs that are going to get large audiences and that are cheap. You just can't blame them for doing that. The danger is that they fill up the prime time schedules with it all the time. When you want to make a challenging drama that is actually going to push or challenge social issues in society, it's going to be ruled out, one, because it's not jolly time television, so therefore people are going to be worried about whether the audience is going to watch it. And secondly, they're going to turn around and say, yeah, but that's going to cost us like £400,000 an hour, you know, but we can go to Peter and get something for $20,000, you know.
You must be feeling very happy about all this.
Yes, we're extremely happy about the success of it, Susan.
But what do you think of Phil's argument?
Well, look, the difficulty, I suppose, that we face in Australia is the fact that we are a nation of only 16 million people. Our quota system there is very different to what it is here in Britain. We have something like only 20% of our television can be indigenous. The rest comes from the rest of the world, so that we have more American and more British programs on Australian television than we do Australian programs.
So you're getting us back?
Yes. Working for Grundy's is an independent production house, and we sell to all of the stations, and therefore we, to survive, we have to make popular entertainment.
Would you do the same in Peter's position?
Yeah, I mean, with one of my other different hats on, with chairman of major television, yes, I would. I mean, one of the things we are actually trying to do is develop a daytime soap that will run 4 or 5 times a week. I mean, even Brookside, we're doing a feasibility study to see if it can strip from next year. And it's partly in a response to this type of programming. And also we've got to take on board the Sky satellite is now transmitting at this moment 5 hours a day of American soap opera. And if we in Britain don't start to respond to that, you're going to find that twice a week Coronation Street, twice a week EastEnders, twice a week Brookside is going to become another one of those quaint British traditions that are suddenly going to be swept aside, you know. So yeah, as a sort of entrepreneur and a television producer and chairman of a company, yes, I do exactly the same thing. And we in Britain have got to find ways to make programs that are cost-effective, right, and sell them to Peter.
Okay. Sue Elkins is phoning from Nottingham. Hello, Sue.
Hello. I feel that Australian television is being made a bit of a scapegoat for all the imports.
Hello, Sue?
Can you hear me?
Yes, speak up and we'll beat this thing together. Speak loudly. Hello, Sue.
Hello.
Carry on.
Yes, I think it's rather sad that we focus only on the soaps from Australia, because we're getting so many wonderful mini-series and good TV movies, children's programs, documentaries from Australia. And I take Phil's point that we're getting increasingly, as the White Paper on Broadcasting goes through as proposed, more and more financial constraints on British production. And I think it's significant that in Australia there's a certain amount of government funding available for production companies. They've got a younger industry, it's growing, it's dynamic. I'd rather see imports coming from Australia from that kind of industry, which is still emerging, hasn't yet peaked.
Right.
Where the society is nearer to ours than, say, from the United States.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to stop you, Sue, because it is extremely hard to hear you over the eggs frying and things. Phil, could you get the gist of what Sue was saying there? Yeah, what do you make of that we're using them as a scapegoat?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what I said before about it. I'm not against neighbours in particular or anything Australian. It's just that it's 24 hours. It happens to be Australia at the moment. A few years ago, it was America. And I think that's just reflected on the cost of the imports. And that really is the point. We've just got to be careful not to swamp our own industry, you know. There's something else which we should actually make, is the fact that we're always looking over the horizons of things. But we actually have, in Britain, a successful daily soap that is started 5 times a week and is building its audience. It's on twice a week, and it's popular come in Wales. And they found, too, they're going from a minority programme by going 5 times a week. They're building their audience, and also in English speaking, because they put English subtitles on it now. You know.
So your standpoint is not of one as a sort of purist television watcher. if you had the chance to do what he's doing, you'd just do it. It's never mind the quality, feel the width, as long as the width is British.
No, it's like everything else. I mean, too much of anything is a bad thing. I mean, what we've got to have is a balanced, staple diet, you know. And we can all use different types of soap for different types of complexions. You know.
Peter Davis is phoning from Leeds. Hello, Peter.
Oh, good morning.
What's your view on all this, Peter?
Well, I think Murray, your first caller, and your sort of third caller made very much my points about the quality of what we're getting from Australia. I should say that I am something of a passive viewer of Neighbours. I have 4 children, and it is the favourite programme amongst them, as with, I think, pretty well all the other children in the country.
I thought no, I won't make a comment about passive viewing of Neighbours. What's your actual point, Peter?
You're right. Okay. I would take issue with Peter Pinney when he talked about the moral aspect of Neighbours. It seems to contain many petty squabbles, malicious gossip, jealousy, intolerance.
Well, that's life, isn't it?
What?
That's life, isn't it?
Well, it might be life in Australia, but it isn't life where I live, I'm pleased to say. And I think it's really giving children a very poor picture of the way that adults behave.
Well, Peter Pinney, Peter Pinney, what view do you take of all this? Because you do have an extraordinary number of children watching, don't you? Why is it so popular with children? And ought you to be sort of taking heed of what Peter Davis is saying? That because you don't set out to be a children's programme, you just have a lot of children viewers.
Yes. Neighbours is a programme, we are a very moral programme, I believe. You know, and in Neighbours we have the young adults, as it were, solving problems for the older people solving problems, and people within the family environment talk to each other. The kids talk to the parents. I mean, there's a lot of households in Australia, there's a lot of households here
that is unrealistic,
where it doesn't happen. But I mean, you know, we show that if they do talk to each other, that they can sort out their problems, etc. You know.
But Phil, we're talking here. I mean, we are having two strands here because the viewers are calling in and talking about the quality of the product and all the rest of it. Now, how are you going to convince British viewers that homegrown things are what they need, while they're very happy to lie back and let Neighbours and all the rest of them wash all over them?
Oh yeah, but they're also very happy to, in a sense, lie back and absorb Grange Hill and Brookside, which, I mean, this type of drama that I want to make, which I think is thought-provoking and stimulating, and it becomes controversial at times. It's that old thing, is that people will accept milk, but they prefer cream, you know, and it comes down to cost and it comes down to scheduling, you know. And Neighbours' success is really due to the fact that Michael Grade's daughter came home and said to him, "Dad, can we see Neighbours after Grange Hill?" Right? And that's what it all comes down.
It's all scheduling.
For all types of television, not only soaps. I mean, as one of those callers said, you know, Neighbours, Australia makes a lot of mini-series, we make a lot of movies that you see over here, and they've got heaps of money spent on them, you know, a lot more money. And years ago, Susan, it was the same situation in Australia where we were swamped with American product. Fortunately for us, though, the local industry, they had to pull up its socks. We had to compete against this cheap American material.
And now we see the results on our screens. Peter,
yes.
I'm sorry to have to stop you there, but because we are going to come back to the discussion of Australian soaps in general. In fact, later we're going to take a closer look at the prisoners from cell block H. And Michael Parkinson, the man once savaged by the Australian Emu, will be revealing what the Australians themselves are watching. Is it British soaps, we wonder? Keep your calls coming on, 061 814 0424. And thanks also to David Darman from Woman magazine for joining in with our discussion, and Joyce in Plymouth. Meanwhile, here's Mike.
Yes, and the calls are coming in on Australian soaps. Brenda Savage from Orpington's given us a call. She says, "I'm still in mourning for the demise of the Sullivans. It was a beautiful story and the acting was superb. It wasn't glossy or silly. It was very, very sad to lose it." Mary Riggins from Edinburgh gave us a call. "I'm a member of a Scottish soap opera cast, Take the High Road. I play Essie. She's the man-eater of the village. I feel that we get too much from Australia. Some of our own soaps could take the place of programs like Neighbours if they were given the right viewing time. And Christine Gill from Aldershot on the same subject, I do not watch any British soaps because they're all too depressing. Everyone always seems to be having a go with one another. The Australian soaps are far more bright and cheerful and much more enjoyable to watch. And on a different subject, Brenda Brooke from Bristol gave us a call saying, my husband wants to complain about the referee John Williams talking to Dean Reynolds, taking him to one side and telling him he was taking too long over a shot when he was in the middle of his break. This is something we saw on television last night. Why was the referee not there to tell Eddie Charlton during his slow, boring game? My husband was furious, and it was obvious that it had upset Dean Reynolds. It was totally wrong. Keep the calls coming in, 061-814-0424. Mavis.
Now in our London studio to tell us just what the Australians are switching on to is our very own Michael Parkinson, back in Britain after the 3-month spell down under. Welcome home, Michael Parkinson.
Thank you, Mavis.
Aside from yourself, what's tops on Australian television, Mike?
Mavis, I don't work on Australian television anymore.
Oh, do you not?
For 4 years, my darling.
Oh,
no.
my darling boy, I'm
No,
up to date.
I worked on it for 6 years, which is like a life sentence anywhere else. I enjoyed it and made a bit of money, but now I'm in tranquil retirement, thank God.
All right.
What are they watching over there? Well, they're watching soaps, as you'd expect. I mean, the patterns are very much like here. They're watching their own soaps. Neighbours is very strange, actually. What's curious about Neighbours is that it's got a following out there, a big following, but there is none of the frenzy, there's none of that pop hysteria that goes on with the stars of Neighbours. I mean, Kylie Minogue and a Kylie Minogue lookalike could walk through Sydney without being pounced upon by the paparazzi or knocked down by screaming fans. And it's interesting, isn't it? There's the debate earlier on in the programme where the editor woman, I think, was saying that we only reflect what the audience wants. Not true at all. The reason why the hysteria is here for Jason and Kylie and all those people is because we have in this country this tabloid industry which builds up these people into things that they're not. I mean,
do you mean to say, then, that Australia does not have a tabloid industry?
No, not at all.
It does not?
Absolutely not. And even more, of course, and even more significant, which makes it a far nicer place to be in if you are actually in the public eye, it doesn't have a gossip industry either. But, I mean, that's beside the point. But, I mean, that's the interesting thing about it, that those people are not the kind of icons that they are here, you know. The other thing that, I mean, the debate about the Australian soaps is an interesting one. I mean, my 2 pence on it is that I agree with Phil. We should be able to make our own tribe, you know, rather than import other people's tribe. Not that Brookside is tribe. He knows what I feel about Brookside. I love the show. But I take his point on that one. But I think that really, basically speaking, there are other things that are happening in Australia that are far more important when we look at the future of our television. For instance, if you watch Australian television for a while, you become aware of what might happen in England, in Britain, if we're not careful. One of their top-rating programs, there's a program called 60 Minutes, which is a rip-off of the American current affairs program. And that gets very, very high in the ratings. Some weeks it gets to #1 in the ratings, for the simple reason that it's treated as show business. The show in Britain would win, this top-rating current affairs program would qualify in the light entertainment category in any awards ceremony.
What do you mean it's poor?
It's not poor.
Well, it's poor as current affairs,
tabloid journalism at its very worst.
Yeah.
It is the lowest form of tabloid journalism. So in a week when Afghan explodes, when the Lebanon is full of horror, when Lockerbie happens, they will have an interview with some inane pop star. They will do a piece they did recently about, do people like cats or not? They will trot out the old story about the brutality of the Foreign Legion. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't reflect the real world. It actually encapsulates all that's horrible about tabloid journalism. Now that is, when we talk about ratings, and the problem of ratings, that's the problem. It's not the soaps. The soaps will always have, God bless them, their own level, their own standard, their own audience. It's when you let the important programs become infected by the ratings game that you're in trouble, and that will be my main criticism of Australian television.
Now, in fact, though, there's not so much Australian television as all that on, is there? I mean, there's a high proportion of American, a high proportion of British.
Yes, there is. But what's again? I mean, I don't want this to be a knocking thing on Australian television. What is very good about Australian television, what I love, two aspects of it. One is I love the sports coverage. I mean, they've shown us the way to do cricket. They cover it with 20.
What do they do
cameras.
Differently?
Well, for one thing, in England, if you might have observed it, and it won't have escaped your attention being a trained observer, is that in fact when we report cricket, we report it from one end only. Yeah. So for a great amount of the time, all the viewer sees is a wicket-keeper's backside. Now, I for years have been on at the BBC about this, and I once got a letter from the press department here saying that the reason why they didn't shoot it from both ends, in other words, it would see the batsman at both ends, was because it would disorientate the viewer. I think that should be left to the viewer. But in Australia, for 10 years now, they've shot it with 20 cameras, and generally speaking, their coverage of sport is much better than ours. The other thing that's wonderful about them are these new type of newscasters they have. Late night, they have two guys who sit there. One is a stand-up comic, and he's okay, but another guy is a journalist and a bit like sort of Clive James figure.
Yeah.
And he calls in the news, and he just sits there and he comments about it. And he says, this is a very boring story. And sometimes he falls asleep during the news. Sometimes he gets angry about the news. And it's that wonderful thing about throwing balance and the newscaster just sitting there saying nothing at all, no matter what happens. You reverse that and you let him react as people at home react to it.
You'd only be able to do that sort of late at night and once in a while,
of course,
wouldn't you?
Of course,
yeah,
but
yeah.
why not? I mean, newscasters are boring, really, aren't they, generally speaking? I mean, and so anything that could make them seem to be more occupying our world, the better.
What about their view of the programmes they see from us?
I think they have, I mean, if you watch, Australia's divided into two kind of nations. The ones that watch ABC television, or like the BBC viewers here, and those that watch, so it's the tabloid and the quality, basically speaking. And the ABC depends upon and is sustained by the British product, particularly the BBC product. And there, you know, there's all the good old BBC stuff is watched and admired. On the other side, not so much at all. There's not so much British product on there at all. It's mainly American, predominantly American. Very heavy American influence in that area. And it's overall, it's not bad, except that, and I keep coming back to this point whenever we have the argument about British television, and I'm not making a special pleading. I know somebody, I worked in American television, Australian television, and British television, and there is no doubt that we have, on balance, the best television in the world. It's something we should protect and look after.
And we're going to let you talk about it later, Mike Parkinson.
Well, if we don't, we've had it. And anybody who doubts what I'm saying should go to Australia and watch what happened there, and predominantly go to America and see what's happened there.
We're going to let you talk a bit longer later on, Michael Parkinson. I'm going to stop you now, though. Over.
Prisoner Cell Block H has enjoyed sweeping success in more than 40 countries worldwide. The wayward women of Wentworth Detention Centre have made Cell Block H Grundy's best-selling soap. It's no wonder they've become national heroes, not least in the Derbyshire outback, where a fan club has been set up in their honour, as you'll see.
Well, I'd say there are about 1,200 members now. It is increasing daily. We produce newsletters, and the first year we produced 7. Next year we'll be producing 4 newsletters, and we also produce merchandise ourselves, car stickers, badges, matchbooks, and people want them, so, you know, we just fulfil a little gap in the market, I suppose. We've had sort of continual interest from the press. It's a nice little sort of, you know, quirky little story to slip in somewhere, so we've had quite a lot of media attention. And that's mainly where people hear about it. But now, of course, we've had so much, it's starting to get from word of mouth. I heard from my sister, I heard it in the laundrette, that kind of thing.
Heard it at bingo, sort of, at my bridge club, at the hairdressers, so quite a few of those.
The members of the fan club are virtually, well, not all men, but obviously, a very high percentage of them are men. I can't imagine why that is, to be honest, because there's no sort of glamorous, you know, sort of sex symbol types in the show. Women sort of tend to take it more sort of tongue-in-cheek and, you know, take it all with a pinch of salt. The men tend to take it sort of a lot more seriously, and the characters are real to quite a lot of people.
We have outside circulation, courtesy of Myra Desmond and the PRG.
Oh, terrific. Worldwide distribution. I can just see breakfast at the palace.
Anything interesting in the paper today, Phil? No, Betty. Just an article about an old tart doing time in the colonies. Oh, how touching. I must send off a royal pardon before 11 too.
Now, we've put together a tour for the leading actress from the programme, Val Lehman, and she'll be touring the country from the end of June until beginning of September.
Yeah, we've got our own promotions and advertising agency. We'll be handling all Val's appearances, whether it be television, personal, whatever. And we're also doing a lot of promotional work with the theme tune. which has just been released. Business is booming. Hopefully, bringing Bal over is just the first. Next year we can look to bring somebody else over and continue like that. We're just giving the public what they want.
But the sun and rain are Christmas too. When morning comes around.
Nice to have a hobby, I always say. Sheila Florance, who plays Lizzie in Prisoner Cell Block H, is on the phone now from Australia. Sheila, hello. Hello,
oh,
Sheila.
hello. I've been listening for some number of minutes to your program. I heard Michael Parkinson, who made an absolute fortune in our country. I heard Peter Pinney, who talked a lot of bullshit. And I heard a little girl called Sue. And I heard a boy called Murray. And I heard a girl called Joyce. And the thing I agree with most is that, of course, British television is the very best in the world. Of course it is. I don't watch anything else.
What do you think? What do you think of Prisoner Cell Block H itself, Sheila?
Well, when I think of Prisoner Cell Block H, which I finished at least 5 years, nearly 6 years ago, there were a band of 10 professional women who came from the theatre, who were called into television in our country, because, you know, our country is not supposed to have any money or any talent or anything else. And we put it on the map. And after about 3 years, they ran out of stories and they ran out of storylines and they brought in people off the street and the thing. But people are still watching it, I understand, all over the world. It's even translated into Japanese, dear mine.
Well, Sheila, could you just hold on a moment, because we have a caller for you, Cheryl Walker, who's calling from Chelmsford. Cheryl, hello.
Hello.
Hello. What's your question for Sheila?
I'd like to ask Lizzie if she'd be surprised as to how well the series took off in Britain.
No, I wouldn't be surprised how it took off, but I'd be surprised to know that I don't know how many episodes you've seen, but I would be surprised if you were still interested after it sort of started fading off. I don't know.
You're still in it,
I don't know.
Right, thank you for that, Cheryl and Sheila, for the moment. Peter, what did you actually set out to do with Prisoner Cell Block H? I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? It's a bizarre program where the wardens all sort of talk like that, and the prisoners are all rather sort of butch and dreadful, and but prison doesn't seem a terribly bad place in that program.
Yes, well, Reg Watson, who once again was the originator of Prisoner,
and Crossroads.
Yes, when he had the original idea that looking behind the scenes, and he certainly wanted the feeling that every housewife sitting at home was interested in what went on in a women's prison. Most of them would never see inside a women's prison, and that it wasn't a nice place to be, virtually, you know. So that he created a drama out of this concept.
But what do you think of the notion? I mean, you know what reputation it has in this country, that it's so bad it's good. It's cult
viewing, yes.
So, I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you just sort of lie back and count the money and say, well, good on them? You know, we started off with gritty realism, well, what we thought was gritty realism, but if people just want to laugh, then that's fine too.
Yes, well, it started off prime time in Australia and was very successful. I mean, it ran for 6 years there in Australia. It had its cult audience in Australia as well, the same as it does here. I mean, if it was shown in, I'm sure if it was shown in prime time, it would have a much larger audience.
Let's turn to Michael Parkinson in London. Michael, I've already asked Peter and Phil about why our nation, the British nation, is now in the grip of Australian soaps, and you did lay some of the blame at the tabloids and magazines' doorstep, but is there another reason?
What, for the so-called cult following of the program of that Prisoner?
Yes, yes.
Prisoner, I mean, I think that in fact it was made, the brief that Grundy's had was, how do you get 27 actors into a shed and film in there? That was the only prerequisite of it. It is popular, in spite of what the tabloid press would have you believe in this country, by two groups of people, in my view. Those who believe that Elvis Presley is alive and working in a bar in Worthing, they're the first group. And the second group are roughly made up of lady sumo wrestlers and lady weightlifters. There is, I mean, you know, those two people from Derbyshire, were they French and Saunders? I mean, they
no,
were incredible.
they were.
Now that is the kind of person, that's the kind of person that watches severe haircuts, my dear, and all that sort of thing. Val Lehman's very interesting.
Right, we want none of your Barnsley chauvinism
Never mind
here.
about Barnsley chauvinism. This is the truth. I mean, for God's sake. I mean, it's but Val Lehman. I interviewed her in Australia, and she said that one of the things that upset them was that the Prisoner Annual was on sale in gay bookshops in Los Angeles.
Oh, right. Well, actually, Michael, Valerie's on the phone now. Valerie Lehman, who plays B in Prisoner Cell Block H. Right. Valerie, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Did you hear that? What Michael just said?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Could you just reiterate your complaint about this, the following that Prisoner Cell Block H has? Are you unhappy about it?
No, I'm not at all unhappy about the following that it has. You're talking about the gay following.
Yes.
It had a very large gay following here too. I think if you put any show with very strong women with extremely strong opinions in it, that very often the lady homosexuals will be entranced by it because they see those ladies as role models for themselves, I think. And the male homosexuals have always been rather sort of enamoured of very strong women. The American show that's on with B. Arthur, B. Lily? Golden Girls is incredibly popular too with the gays over here. And I assume in its own country and probably England as well.
Valerie, you're coming over to Britain to do a tour, aren't you? Courtesy of the fan club.
Yes, I am.
Yes, how are you looking forward to that?
June 25th.
Yes. Who are you expecting to meet? What sort of people are you expecting to meet on this tour?
I expect to meet the people who sit in their living rooms and watch the show, however many hours a week it is on television over there. Those that admire it mostly, I presume. I can't imagine those people who loathe it coming out in great numbers to meet me.
Okay, thanks for the moment, Valerie. George Murchington's on the phone now from Birmingham. George, hello.
Hello there.
Hello.
We've seen Australia's soaps, the same actors and actresses appeared in 2 or more soaps a week. Is this due to the shortage of actors in Aussie or actresses? Or is it just Grundy's got his own private circus of performers which he can call upon? Or is it just some silly set of rules set down by the equivalent of equity in Australia operating a closed shop to actors?
We'll put that one to Peter Pinney, George, thanks.
Yeah, equally so. Will you like to ask him how the quota system works? What quota of our stuff he gets from us?
We'll go into that if we have time. Peter, just why do you see so many of them from one soap to the other?
Well, you've got to understand that we're a country of only 16 million people, so that percentage-wise, there's not a lot of actors there. I mean, we have a healthy film and television industry and a healthy theatre industry, but sometimes when you're making 4 or 5 serials a week, talent is at a premium.
Yeah. Now, Phil, Brookside is shown in Australia.
Yeah, it is. It's shown on the ethnic channel, SBS. But it has a higher audience appreciation than, say, EastEnders does in Australia.
Yeah,
we get a lot of mail from there as well.
Yeah. But just to go back to our first discussion, that, you know, you've sort of nailed your colours to the mast and all that kind of thing. Is it sour grapes, or do you genuinely believe... I mean, because you're exporting to Australia with Brookside. Now, if you could swamp Australia, would you be just as happy to do that?
Oh, of course we would, yeah. But it's not just sour grapes. It's a kind of... it's trying to look into the future of the industry. I mean, it's like I'm in a very privileged position to work in television. But actually, we've got 55 million people who get a lot of enjoyment out of our industry. And also what we should not forget is that we shouldn't get carried away with kind of production value, because once you've got a set, once you've got cameras and production crews and things, it's what happens in front of them. And one of the great traditions we've got in Britain is great performers and great writers. And if you can get the writers to give you good scripts and good stories, we'll then find the performers to rise to them. And that's something else we've got to learn, to appreciate and to protect in the future.
The discussion will go on, but we've got to end it there. Phil Redmond, Peter Pinney and Michael Parkinson in London, thanks all very much for taking part. Now, Mike.